Hello and welcome to this episode of Talking Politics. It has been a dramatic day. There's lots to get through. So here's what's coming up on the podcast. Angela Rayner out.
A very impressive member of the cabinet. Genuinely a huge loss to Starmer.
The cabinet reshuffle on. Before the election, Starmer promised to end the chaos, and look at the upheaval that we've witnessed today. And who is there to gloat at all the chaos? Why, it's Nigel Farage, of course.
We are all ships rising on a turquoise tide.
He thinks that the Labour Party will now start to split. He thinks that it will lead to a much earlier election.
Hello, I'm Julie Etchingham. I'm joined by Robert Peston in North London, and we've also got Harry Horton, who's in Birmingham, for the first day of Reform UK's party conference. So where do we start then? From a government that promised to stop the chaos, a political earthquake in Westminster, doesn't the summer suddenly feel a million miles away? It was triggered by the resignation, of course, of Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner after weeks of pressure over her attacks, and that flat. What has followed has been a massive reshuffle of some of the biggest jobs and figures in politics. We'll talk about that in a moment, but first, to Robert, to just chew over the day for us. It's hard to overstate, Robert, isn't it, how big a loss that Angela Rayner is to this government, and particularly to Keir Starmer.
No, that is correct. I mean, one of the things that, as you know, I moan about a lot is how few genuinely big figures there are in politics these days, how many people of substance. And she was that rare thing, a sort of giant among pygmies. She could communicate in an authentic way, and many would say far better at that than the Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Her really rather impressive life story, really difficult upbringing, mother with acute mental illness. She leaves school. This is Angela Rayner herself, 16, pregnant, with very few qualifications, but joins becomes an employee of a trade union, and then just sort of works her way up through the Labour movement to become Deputy Prime Minister. And she connected her own hardship and the way that she rose above her background with a sort of vision for what she wanted to achieve as a political leader. And so, a very impressive member of the cabinet, and genuinely a huge loss to Starmer and the Labour government.
Yeah, and I suppose what's interesting is to just get your reflection on what she meant to him. I mean, it was extraordinary, wasn't it, seeing that handwritten acceptance of her resignation really spoke to that he personally needed her politically because she could reach parts that he couldn't. And that especially was within his own party.
They've had a slightly troubled relationship. It wasn't that long ago where he was, this was when they were in opposition, and he was doing a reshuffle. He was tempted to get rid of her because they haven't always got on well. But as you say, in the last certainly year or two, he woke up to the fact that it was far better to have her as an ally, just because she was able to inspire enthusiasm among Labour members, and indeed in parts of the parliamentary Labour Party, and he was less able to do that. And secondly, just in terms of the broader population, there was an authenticity, well, is an authenticity about how she communicates, which meant that although, she's not an uncontroversial figure and not everybody loves her, as I say, she just had that unique ability to communicate in a way that resonated with people. I mean, we live in this age where not only what you say, but how you say it matters so much. It's one of the reasons that we're going to get on to this later. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons we're going to get on to talk about Farage later in the programme. And, Farage has that ability. But within the Labour Party, she was that rare person who could reach out in that way.
And what does she do now? I mean, we're going to talk about the reshuffle in a moment because we've got this sort of twin pack of massive events in the space of a few hours, Robert. But I mean, she's off back to the back benches. You know, she's stood down from all three of her key posts. But imagining her as a figure on the back benches, what she represents and how she could at some point, despite pledging that loyalty in that very comprehensive letter resignation that she sent to the Prime Minister, there will be people watching her every move now, won't they? How do you think she's going to play it?
I doubt that she knows. She will be in genuine shock. I mean, we shouldn't forget that her downfall has been extraordinarily rapid. I mean, yes, there's been, stuff in the media. We've been reporting on it. Newspapers have been reporting on it for weeks. Allegations about potential wrongdoing in the way that she bought this apartment, this we now know legally defined second home in Hove, a home that she thought was her primary residence, and I'll come back to why that matters in just a second. But I think she honestly believed that she hadn't. I think for quite a long time she honestly believed she hadn't done something sufficiently wrong to warrant resignation. It was only on Wednesday that she revealed that she'd taken expert tax advice that said that she owed £40,000 in unpaid tax, stamp duty, because she'd wrongly assumed that this Hove property was her primary residence. And, what did for her was when she went through her paperwork and had to hand it over to the ethics advisor saw, and this was sort of devastating for her, saw that two legal advisors had told her that she ought to get professional expert advice on how much tax to pay. They also said they thought there was a good chance that she might only be liable for the lower rate of tax, but they said explicitly that they weren't the world's greatest experts on these things and she needed to get expert advice. She failed to do that. And that is why the ethics advisor had absolutely no doubt in his mind that she hadn't upheld the highest standards in public life. She had breached the ministerial code and she would have to go. And actually, as a result of what he said, there must also now be a risk that the taxman, HMRC, will decide that she was careless. That's a technical term that they use, and therefore they may end up also fining her. So along with having to pay 40,000 in tax, or tax that she owes, and the interest on it, she may also face a penalty. This is all just sort of terribly humiliating stuff for her. And
we should say, Robert, forgive me for interrupting, but when she gave that interview to Beth Rigby earlier in the week, that was, you could see that was an Angela Rayner. We've caught glimpses of it before when she's talked about her family background, but the fact that court injunction was lifted, and I suppose she just took us straight to the heart of the story that she wanted at that point to lay public, and she's touched on it again in that resignation letter. It's a really personal moment, isn't it, for her? And whichever party, whatever circumstances, there's no getting away from that.
Yeah, and look, you say, you asked me the question, well, what kind of a politician will she be going forward? And the other thing to focus on is that in her resignation letter, she said, and I'm sure she believes this, I'm sure she's saying this very sincerely, because I have talked to her about these sorts of things on occasions in the past. She is enormously protective of her children. She has a severely disabled son. And she's extremely protective of her private life. And her resignation letter, the heart of it is that she feels that her children and her family have had to absorb far too much pressure, far too much scrutiny from the media. And, the nub of what she's saying is that, she, in her own mind, had no doubt that she had to to quit because of the pressures on them, and she wants to protect them. And I think the sort of proof of this is that she's also resigned from the elected post of leader of the Labour Party. It was not, I think, in Keir Starmer's powers to sack her from that post. I think she genuinely had to choose to do that. And, my assumption is she's chosen to do that because if she hadn't done that, the thing that would have happened immediately would have been for her, in a sense, perhaps to become the focal point of opposition to Keir Starmer. And I don't think she's ready for that. She may end up being the sort of, the prince, or, I don't want to sound sexist, princess across the water. But, essentially the person in, just waiting there to seize the crown. She may become that in time, but she's definitely not that today. Today, she's just, a very upset, rather damaged, but rather impressive politician who will now, I suspect, take some time with her family to work out what's next.
Well, we should talk about what comes next for Sir Keir Starmer and indeed for this government, because what we've also witnessed today after that resignation is this astonishingly wide-scale cabinet reshuffle. I mean, before the election, Starmer promised to end the chaos, and look at the upheaval that we witnessed today. Just give us your sharp take on what we've witnessed. I mean, there's some huge changes in the big jobs.
Yes, this is, the definitive Starmer cabinet. These are the people that he rates. And if this lineup fails, then in a sense, this rather large human shield disappears, and it all becomes about, his own qualities. And at that, if this lineup doesn't work, then people will genuinely start to question whether he's up to the job. And just to run through the significant changes, he regards Shabana Mahmood as Justice Secretary as one of the best performers, and she's therefore become Home Secretary. However, there was also really quite a lot of success that Yvette Cooper had as Home Secretary in negotiating important, particularly agreements related to the migration crisis that this government faces. So important deals with France, that sort of one in, one out trial that they're running with France on asylum seekers. That was absolutely Yvette Cooper's negotiating triumph. I mean, if it turns out to be a success, it's a triumph. But anyway, it was her baby. She did it from start to finish. She's also negotiated returns agreements with other countries. She's worked with Germany on doing more to crack down on the gangs. So I think the view of Starmer and of the cabinet secretary was that Yvette Cooper had proved herself, in a sense, in the international role, which is why she is now foreign secretary.
David Lammy's been moved from that post to Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. So you've got these three moves.
Exactly. Just to be clear about the point about Lammy, is he is one of the, he might not quite be in the Rayner class of communicators, but he is a very good communicator. Again, he's one of the few at the top of the government who really has that ability to talk, I think, in a way that does connect with people. At the same time, they both have this as infuriating others. So, he will now be the second most prominent person in the government as Deputy Prime Minister. And then lower down, there are also a whole series of other really quite important changes, of which I think the most eye-catching one is the creation of this super ministry, welfare and skills coming together under Pat McFadden. And the reason that matters is we've got this welfare bill that is going up really very significantly at a time when the government has major debt problems. But similarly, you can't get the welfare bill down in a sort of Labour kind of way,
Yeah.
unless you make sure that people who are losing benefits go to jobs. And that's all about, therefore, making sure they have skills. So this is a big initiative.
Yeah, and it is notable too that Liz Kendall got a move after having such an appallingly sort of sticky period over that whole welfare debate. But just a final reflection on this, because we must get on to talking about reform and what we've witnessed in Birmingham today, Robert. Do reshuffles ever really work? I mean, the three key posts that you highlighted there, they might be different figures with different emphasis, but if the mindset is the same, does it really affect change? Does it really mean that they get a grip on something like the small boats crisis, for example? Do they ever really work?
Well, this is a government that has certainly got some quite big challenges on its plate, and we'll talk again and again and again on other days about the economic challenges they face and the fiscal debt challenge with this budget looming at the end of November. I mean, look, I have seen, over many, many years of being steeped in this stuff, definitely better and worse cabinets. So, yes, I don't think you have to assume that reshuffles are, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The quality of who's in certain jobs matters, but equally, you can always be disappointed with the performance of somebody who you think is going to be great. I mean, I was told a story literally just the other day by a very senior civil servant in the office of a member of this cabinet who most of the world thinks is doing or has been doing a rather brilliant job. But this senior civil servant said to me, "You won't believe it. He just won't read the papers we give him. He's just become so lazy." Now, this is somebody.
A whole list of characters spinning through our heads as you say that, Robert, tantalisingly.
This is somebody who I don't think has necessarily been found out yet by the Prime Minister. But it just goes to show. It just goes to show that even if you think, you've got the brilliant people in the jobs, you might end up being, if you are Prime Minister, a bit disappointed.
Well, you're tantalisingly clearly not going to spill the beans at that point, Robert. But on that note, with that question mark hanging in the air now, and we'll all be watching the cast of characters wondering, we should just move from the sort of chaotic Downing Street 100 miles away today to Birmingham. It was Nigel Farage who was watching on in glee, of course, on the first day of Reform UK's party conference, so much so that Nigel Farage actually brought forward his speech to react to Angela Rayner's resignation. Let's take a listen.
We are all ships rising on a turquoise tide, headed ever closer towards winning the next general election. It's been a day of some considerable news, but the reason that I've moved this speaking time forward is because this government is deep in crisis. Not only have they fallen into deep popularity within just a year of winning the general election, but it's become clear to all of us that it is a cabinet of wholly unqualified people to run our country. They are not fit to govern. I think there is every chance now of a general election happening in 2027, and we must be ready for that moment.
Well, that was Nigel Farage telling his party to prepare for an election in as little as 2 years, he reckoned. Harry, you were listening in. He's never short of confidence, is he? But boy, what a moment he had. He had a bit of a gift there delivered to him, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And it's been a slightly chaotic day with things moving around, but most of the Reform supporters here, members, Nigel Farage's team, they're all pretty cock-a-hoop, I think. They sort of woke up this morning and thought it was win-win in the sense that, either all the focus would be on Nigel Farage and his speech, or all the focus would be on what they see as chaos in government, and then they could present themselves as this sort of government in waiting, and that was the big theme of Nigel Farage's speech today, was that reform have come a long way since the general election in 2024, and they've got all these councillors now, they've got 2 regional mayors, they control lots of local authorities, they've got lots of momentum, and what they're doing now is preparing for government. And Nigel Farage's message today was he thinks that the Labour Party will now start to split. He thinks that means that it will lead to a much earlier election than many of us predict, and he wants to have all his reform candidates selected by the end of next year, so that if there is an early general election, as he thinks there will be in 2027, then his party is ready to fight it.
How do they sustain this momentum, do you think, though, Harry? You've been sort of up close and personal with reform pretty consistently over these past couple of years. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? This has the feel of a proper party conference this time. It's not a rally. It's there in the heart of the country. The numbers that are joining as new members of Reform UK are striking. How do you think that they genuinely keep some momentum and sustain the poll leads that they've been securing?
Yeah, it's a good question, Julie, and it's a challenge for them. And there is a school of thought that perhaps reform have peaked too early, and actually gaining control of these councils, gaining controls of these mayoral authorities means now they've got a record they've got to defend. And you don't need me to tell you that it's quite difficult to run local authorities at the moment. Cash is tight, and there might be some reform-controlled councils that don't do a very good job, and reform's opponents will start to, poke fun at them. So that's a real challenge for them. How they think they can do it? Well, they're looking at more defections. We've seen today, what's quite striking about this conference actually is the number of former Tory MPs walking around the place.
How's that going down with those who've been with them from day one, to see that this influx? I mean, not least led, of course, the charge being led today in particular by Nadine Dorries.
Yeah, well, there's a split within the party about it, and different schools of thought. And some people, they think that essentially these are rats fleeing a sinking ship, and why should reform take on these former Tory MPs? And it will do damage to their reputation. But we heard Nigel Farage in his conference speech today talk about the fact that he thinks one of reform's big weaknesses is their lack of government experience, and one of the ways he wants to address that is by bringing in people who've been in government before, and he's going to have to do that with people from other parties, of course. So look, they say they're not saying yes to everyone. They say there's lots of Tory MPs who want to join the party who they're saying no to because they think they've got too much baggage. Nadine Dorries, I'm told, the discussions were going on for quite some time. Nigel Farage personally was involved in them, but he thought that she sort of has the personality, the criteria and the experience to be of a benefit to reform. And they say there will be more in the months ahead. And the effect of that is they think that it's sort of, the calibre of people they're bringing in particular, if you look at Andrea Jenkins, who's now Mayor of Lincolnshire, Nadine Dorries.
It was quite an entrance she made today, wasn't it, Harry?
It was quite an entrance, singing on stage. One of her own songs, in fact, that she wrote in a previous career when she tried to become a pop singer. But those people were all very close to Boris Johnson. So bringing them into the Reform Party, they think, kills off this narrative that Boris Johnson is coming back. They think it also just sort of adds to the woes of Kemi Badenoch and her leadership, makes the Tory membership even sort of more despondent about the state of their party, and it gives the impression of momentum with reform. They think people are coming towards them. So that's the plan over the next few months.
Fascinating. Well, I know you'll continue to track it for us and give us all the inside details on it, Harry. Thank you very much indeed for that. And Robert, I know it'll be fascinating, in our ongoing conversations to get your sense of how Labour regards what they're witnessing in Birmingham with reform at the moment, in the middle of all of their difficulties. But for the moment, that's all we've got time for. If you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube or any podcast platform to make sure you never miss an episode. But for now, thanks for joining us. Bye.